So welcome to Barbados Decides. It's a teleSUR English special dedicated to covering the 2018 Prime Ministerial election race in Barbados. I'm Soini Gray.
And I'm Keishan Haynes. And for the next hour, we're going to look back on today, the last couple of weeks of the campaign, and also to the future, to what the Barbadian population can expect when they choose their either new Prime Minister or re-elect their current Prime Minister. And those election results are probably going to be within a few hours. But first,
we have an interview with our Laura Prada. Now, Laura Prada has been out whole day in Barbados, and she's ready to speak to us, to explain to us how the day has been, Election Day 2018. Laura Prada, how has your day been so far?
Hello, nice to greet you both. Indeed, today we were around Bridgetown looking at where the polling stations were placed and talking with Barbadians to know their expectations and what their claims are. Also, today we also could appreciate that this day went through with very peacefully, with much order, because the transit to vote was very organized. The authorities indicated the voters how they could do it and how to line up to make it more organized. This is what we could see, we were able to see during the day. So Yini Kijan.
Really quickly, Laura, what was the feeling on the ground? How have Barbadians been telling you who they want to vote for?
Well, some of them are more they prefer the BLP, and others are more sided to the DLP, the two main political parties here in Barbados, the Barbadian Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. Those are the main parties here in Barbados, the ones that have been sharing in the last years the government direction of Barbados. This is some of the highlights that we can share in this minute. Also, the local television is now sharing some of the results of the resume of what was going on today at the polling station and on the different constituencies. Let's remember that today are being elected the candidates for the 30 constituencies of Barbados and the 30 persons who will represent the Barbadians at the Parliament. So, Unikijan.
Laura, we understand that there were some long lines and a lot of young voters as well in this election. What did you see? Did you see also these long lines, and what was the age of the voters? Did you see more young voters or more older voters?
Well, Kijan, we were able to see that there were Barbadians of all ages voting at the polling stations, and they were all assisting very peacefully and very optimistic about the future of Barbados. We also were able to see that in these polling stations, the people were queuing up very early in the morning when the polling stations open, but through the day, the queues started to lower down, and Barbadians just started coming with more spaced time from each other. But at some points there were queues. We also heard at the news television here in Barbados that some people were complaining about that when they were in the polling station to vote, their names didn't appear on the list, and they had to go to another polling station to see if their name was there. So that's what we could see, and mostly I can tell you that young people are very trusted that with these elections a change and improvement in the national economy will come forward.
Thank you so much. We've been talking to our Laura Prada in Barbados. Now we're going to go back to Laura later on in this program because I understand that she has a very special interview for us. Now, we were just talking to Laura about how voting went today. We have video of Prime Minister Stuart casting his vote at the Bailey's Primary School. The DLP leader said by all reports, voting today was actually pretty smooth, without incident. Of course, he said long lines are a sign of a good democracy and that he's very happy with his campaign. So let's have a quick listen to what Prime Minister Stuart had to say about his actual campaign.
I thought we had a very good election, period. The difference between Barbados and many other jurisdictions in other countries across our election campaigns, they peaceful and violence-free. Yes, people express themselves vigorously and take up very strong positions on behalf of the political party they support, but it never transcends the perimeters of decency, and therefore our elections are very peaceful. The campaign was a very peaceful one. Both parties conducted, all the parties conducted themselves, I thought, properly.
Okay, so we were just listening to Prime Minister Stuart, the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party there. Now, this is an interesting thing that he is saying there about the state of the Barbadian, just in the Caribbean in general. You have this issue, lack of issue really, of violence on the campaign. Everybody is very calm. Elections are just easygoing.
We get passionate with our words.
Yes.
So we attack verbally.
Right.
But you're not really going to have any
physical violence.
Correct.
I mean, there are. I mean, we're not saying that there aren't no instances of that.
You have some concerns. Jamaica has concerns. Like I was a student in Jamaica during elections, and you had to be really careful about what colors you wore during the areas during the entire electoral season. But that's not the norm. That is very specific to Jamaican elections. But yeah, generally across the Anglophone Caribbean, elections are exciting. They're fun, but they're not violent, you know?
Also today voting, we had Mia Motley. She is the political leader of the Barbados Labour Party. She also was very confident. Laura Prada actually caught up with her when she went to cast her ballot, and she was very confident going into this election day. Let's listen. All right, we'll try.
So Mia told Laura that she was really happy with her campaign, even though there were some things that she was going to fix. But, you know, she is very confident that she's going to make history today. So let's listen to that. Let's listen to that song right now, because they tell me they have it.
Okay.
Today, I just want to focus on the election today and voting. But as we said, we've had to stabilize our country and our economy. We've separated out mission critical from transformational. And the most important thing is for us to stabilize our society and our economy, and at the same time build a path for transformation, because we believe that Barbadians can do far better than we're doing now.
Can we talk about body language? Because I'm looking at Mia Motley there in that soundbite, and she's like, I'm not focusing on anything, you know, let the results come whenever they come, because that is the behavior of someone who knows I'm going in. No, not believes. That behavior, that confidence is intrinsic. She knows she's going to win the elections.
So we're looking now at, this is video of Lynette Eastman. Lynette Eastman is the third party candidate. Now, in Caribbean electoral politics, a third party is almost unheard of, and they don't necessarily make a strong impact when it comes to what the electorate.
We can't usually support three parties. Right, exactly. So a third party is usually seen as being an attack on one of the two more stronger established parties. And Lynette Eastman used to be from the BLP, I believe.
And broke away. She's a
Correct.
lawyer by profession. But you do have to appreciate she has garnered a lot of ground in a short space of time. This party is less than a year old. She
Yes.
managed to bring together almost 30 candidates for this election.
The party is actually called the United
The
Progressive,
United Progressive
Party.
the UPP. So this is, it'll be interesting to see what happens after this, whether she gives up totally on electoral politics, if she still fights through it, or if in any stretch of the imagination she wins a seat, if she might have to form some sort of alliance with another party. We have seen it before happen.
We have seen it before happen.
In the Caribbean, so this is not completely out of the blue.
Now, they have quite a lot of independent persons competing in this election, so it might be a good time for Lynette Eastman to say, no, I'm here, I'm going to make my way, I'm going to make my presence felt bit by bit and build my political resume. So maybe not this election, but few elections down the road, the United Progressive Party, correct, is going to be a force to be reckoned with. We'll see.
But sorry, let's go back to what this actual campaign looked like. This was a campaign of dichotomy. You had a very traditional campaign being run by the DLP Prime Minister Stuart, who came out and did everything the old way.
Yes.
He held his rallies, I mean, as Prime Minister, he had the ability to make an address to the nation on national television. His online presence was almost non-existent. Let's just juxtapose that to Mia Motley, who was everywhere online. Everything she did, there was a video. Press conferences were live on Facebook. Campaign rallies were live on Facebook.
Correct.
And then there was this...
Facebook, Instagram.
Well, then that's the other thing. Then she took over this Barbados Bajan Tube,
Yes.
a young entertainment Instagram page with over 140,000 followers.
Which means not just in Barbados, but not just Barbadians in Barbados, but Barbadians across the diaspora.
Right.
So, yeah.
And this thing is, and she didn't, and she really used it as it was intended.
Yeah.
She didn't go on the Instagram stories to start talking about the economy and pushing forward an agenda and policies. She went talking about lunch, and she had the cold, and she was showing what she would eat to get rid of the cold.
So
and
I actually
she really
listened
brings
to
down
her
this
rally last night, right? I looked at the
side.
rally on Facebook, and I'm realizing that every time Mia Motley talks, that she has to quote a song. So she quoted Buju Banton last night. I watched it this morning. She's quoted Bob Marley. And I'm like, this is a very, the campaign is very young and vibrant. Her song was a remake of a popular soca song that came out of Kaduma 2017. So she did not lie down and assume, okay, Stuart is going to hand me this election. I am going to work for it. Like, this election is not my own.
So let's just listen to this soundbite. These are the two political leaders, say the main ones, on the same day. 2 days ago, in the lead up to today's election, on the same day, this was, so that we just put them side by side, Mia Motley and Stuart.
Stuart and Mia.
Well, it's the order that it comes, yes.
Yes.
The government over the last 10 years gives the lie to any claim that the Democratic Labour Party does not have its fingers on the correct pulse in Barbados.
As you can see, now going on a little whistle-stop tour just here at my constituency office in Bushall. Gotta give some love home at me for about 2 hours and then hit the road again. Gone. So you see now, another 15 seconds, we're in Mahika. Watch the crowd. Things looking good, things feeling good.
right, so you just saw the two persons who are vying for the two main persons who are vying for the position of Prime Minister, back to back. Their campaign styles very decisively. The more traditional, formal version of style of Frondell Stuart, and the hip, digital campaigning of Mia Motley. Kijan, I understand that we have a guest.
We do. But just quickly before we get to that, what I understand, and we heard Laura mention it, is that there were a lot of young voters out today. A lot of people that I spoke to on the ground in Barbados came out.
How many of them were really attracted by Mia Motley's?
It could really go that way for her. That could really help her, because they also came out early. In traditionally, older voters will come out at the start of the opening of polls.
Yes.
But some of the people I spoke to on the ground said that they saw young voters out there, which is almost unheard of. And the turnout, we understand, is pretty high. So
that's interesting. Yeah, so that means that, and that seems to imply that a change is good. A change might be coming.
Well, we don't want to put any chickens before they hatch. But to somebody who can give us a lot more background on this is Derek Ramkissoon. He is a political analyst who does work up and down the Caribbean for multiple campaigns, but I understand this one he worked as an independent. He's right now in Suriname, but he did spend some time in Barbados, so he joins us live now via Skype. Derek, can you hear us?
Hi, yes I can. Good afternoon to all your viewers.
Good afternoon.
In your studio.
So Derek, let's start with this. Earlier when we spoke, you actually had some dire predictions for the next winner. You said this is the election to lose, because the next person who wins has a lot riding on their shoulders.
Okay, so let's go to the history, the political history. Last election was a 62% odd voter turnout, and there are just 2 or 3 seats that could shift the whole balance of power. So, for example, St. Michael Central and St. Michael West, these are 2 seats held by the incumbent, and that just requires a 2 or 3% swing. What is interesting is the present Prime Minister's own seat, St. Michael South. Anything like a 14 or 15% swing can actually change the entire leadership. This entire campaign was about chasing the undecided voter, the first-time voters, the young voters. And once we begin to see a swing, anything between 5 to 14% swing towards Mia Motley's party, then we may have a complete, as they say, a political landslide victory. That being said, this campaign was also about the serious issues. So one of the strategies that was used, as you saw, was to use social media to herd electors into a sort of frenzy, political frenzy, to take them to the polls. That being said, we have serious issues in Barbados to address. The economic management of the country is going to be high on the agenda in the very short term. The country is going to have to make a decision as to how they manage economic transformation, whether there's going to be a devaluation of the currency, whether there's going to be a cut in public sector employment, whether there are going to be new taxes, whether the new government is going to go to the IMF for assistance in terms of managing their debt. So from a political perspective, there are going to be harsh economic realities before Christmas for the Barbados population.
So this means that there's no or very little honeymoon period for any prime minister, whoever wins, whichever on either side.
But let's be clear. You make a number of promises on the platform. And if there is an electoral swing that gives you beyond 20 seats, 20, 24, 25 seats, there's going to be a high level of expectation. And people expect a better quality of life in the shortest possible time. The calculation that major electorate will be understanding, I think that is going to be severely tested. And if I am in the losing party and I've lost government, I will certainly give me a no time to settle.
Now, Derek, we're understanding that some of the reports are saying that the turnout for this election has already exceeded or seems to be on track to exceed the previous elections. What do you think that is going to imply for the results?
Well, that does suggest a political change in terms of the leadership of the country is going to emerge. The question is how much beyond 20 votes, 20 seats you may get. It means that come tomorrow morning, there's a high political expectation that solutions will be implemented, which is going to be difficult. And if you have raised the expectation of improving the quality of life, because you talk about pensions, you talk about welfare programs, you're talking about restructuring the economy to provide better services for education and healthcare. Fundamental issue is where is it come from? And we've all challenges of moving Barbados forward, but political fatigue of the electorate, in which people may have got tired of the incumbent prime minister, may have been rational for the support for Mia Mottley, as well as the type of campaign, seem to suggest she galvanized the first-time voters.
But let's talk about the campaign really quickly. Do you think that Stuart, 10 years in power, Barbados in an economical tailspin, do you think that at some point he threw in the towel and is essentially ready to be in opposition for a little while things are going bad, and then he can look like the savior again come next election?
I don't believe the internal politics of the BLP will allow him to remain as leader. You're going to have other individuals with a higher level of political aggression who would be seeking leadership of the BLP in the shortest possible time. And therefore, the new type of leadership that may arrive in the BLP would perhaps make it quite challenging for the new Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, to settle down.
Derek, really quickly, sorry, I wanted to go back to that whole issue of Stuart because it seems to me, I don't understand why the DLP, the Democratic Labour Party, allowed their Prime Minister, Stuart, their political leader, to run the election campaign in the way that he did. I got a very defeatist sense from him. The fact that he took so long to name the election date, his mood, his body language, the way he responded, the campaign did not seem to be run by someone who actually wanted to get a third term in office as Prime Minister. What do you say to that?
Most political parties in the Caribbean are basically leadership-centric. Because as you've heard, people are voting for Mia Mottley, notwithstanding the party's position on X, Y, or Z. And people would have believed that Mia Mottley would have served her time in the political vineyard. And therefore, leadership matters in political campaigns in the Caribbean. And now the new tools of technology allow leaders to meet new prospective voters within a 30-second to 1 minute time frame.
Mia Mottley seems to be a very gregarious, outgoing person. Already we have seen there were images of Alan Chastanet, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, at one of her rallies. Stuart is the complete opposite. He's very introverted. He keeps to himself. He's been pretty hidden ever since he's been Prime Minister. Do you think that Mia Mottley, if she wins, will be able to perhaps rally a sort of unity within the Caribbean with anybody who may need to help or create more allies or create more unity within the Caribbean and help Barbados out of whatever situation that they find themselves in?
First of all, let's be clear. The politics in the region has changed. So the conservative type of campaign that we saw that Mr. Stuart ran, those things have now changed tremendously. And we have new leadership emerging throughout the region. If you look at what we see happening in Jamaica with Andrew Holness, and then you have Alan Chastanet, as you mentioned, So there is a move afoot among certain Caribbean leaders to get a common type of policy that perhaps deal with situations like Caribbean debt negotiation, relationships with Brexit and the European Union, relationships with the USA, how you deal with national and regional security. So there is a wider communication level that is occurring as opposed to 20, 30 years where prime ministers work in a sort of isolation. Mayor Motley, however, will have many serious issues to deal with in terms of the economic restructuring of Barbados, in terms of managing the expectations of persons. So I think she may be leaning on other prime ministers to help guide her processes.
But it seems like she already has at least the support of perhaps one, Alan Chastanet in St. Lucia. So
but we must understand how political parties are arranged in the country. There are different type of alliances and allegiances.
And Mia is also an experienced politician. She's a former Attorney General of Barbados, so it's entirely possible that she already has a lot of political I see Derek switching, but I was going to say that because she has experience being in government, not as Prime Minister, but as Attorney General, she probably has political allies across the Caribbean. Derek, what do you say to that?
Yes, you would find a number of senior politicians in their respective countries would have developed a political network in the region. But I want to basically warn the Barbados population. Someone may be a very effective cabinet minister, but when it comes to leading your country, it's a completely different ballgame. And therefore, some of the decisions she's going to have to implement may cause political stress for her own party supporters. But you must recognize that now you're Prime Minister of Barbados, and your interest is that of Barbados, as opposed to your political interest of the party.
Now, Derek, to be fair, now we are speaking as though Mia Motley has already won. Now, we also have to remember back in 2013, everyone thought the BLP was going to win this election, and then you saw what happened there. So let's say that polls are closed, the counting is done, results come out. Frondell Stuart is the Prime Minister one more time for another 5-year period. What is the first thing that he is going to have to do to regain that population, that confidence of the population that would have been moving away from him and toward Mia Motley?
Okay, I'm basing my analysis on two things that you've said. A higher voter turnout. And therefore, the two seats that require a 2% swing, if that were to come over to the BLP, which is basically St. Michael Central and St. Michael West, if those two seats turn to BLP, then you have a change of government, if everything else remains fixed. Regardless of who wins, the economic reality of restructuring your economy, looking at the possibility of some form of devaluation, the whole restriction or reduction of employment in the public sector, those are the things that are going to have to be done, regardless of assumes the leader or prime minister.
And it's a lot of bitter pills to swallow for the electorate, for not the electorate anymore, for the population, because nobody likes to hear that you have to get a cut in salary or that workers have to go home, and that
public sector will not get their salaries and will not expect salary increases.
And that is something that they will have to deal with.
But we've got to look at how we utilize the state and the effects of patronage for decades.
Yes.
The entire Caribbean society has been built on patronage, in which politicians say wanting to get elected, and when they get into office, they get political fever, so to speak, because they become, or forget what they say on the campaign, and then decided that I am now going to join the status quo.
Yeah.
And the reality is, most of our Caribbean countries have a debt management problem, have an over-bloated public sector employment, talk public-private partnership, but really have not done anything to facilitate private partnership development without tax concessions to investors. So we've got to look now as to how we move our country forward, our countries forward.
Thank you so much, Derek. We've been speaking to Derek Ramkissoon from Suriname about
the elections in Barbados. Speaking to us in Quito.
Yes.
The internet.
Well,
what a time to be alive.
So I forgot to say that Derek is not from Barbados?
Derek is actually Trinidadian, yes. But he made a lot of good points and a lot of things that we have seen about, especially about being an effective campaigner, because you and I, coming from Trinidad and Tobago, we saw the campaign that Kamala Persad-Bissessor ran in 2010. 2010. There was the first one.
Okay.
It was inspirational. It moved. It was great, and there was a lot of issues that came after, and it will be interesting to see if Mia Mottley wins, because we keep speaking like she is going to win. We don't know anything until it happens. How you transition from being in opposition, being a campaigner, to being a prime minister.
Because you have much less pressure if you're in opposition.
Yes.
And being the one in the driver's seat is really difficult. And it's also very easy to inspire people and talk about hopes and dreams when you're not actually making the hard decisions.
Until you get into the position.
Correct.
And you realize, wow, this is not as easy as we thought. But
now, Derek made us focus very much on the economy. We have quite a few people talking about how the economy will affect the campaign in Barbados. So on Thursday, no, today is Thursday, on Wednesday, I spoke to Peter Wickham of Cadres. Cadres is the Caribbean Development Research Services company. So they essentially do polling throughout the Caribbean on elections. And I asked
Peter
him...
Wickham is from Barbados, too, I understand.
Peter Wickham is actually Bayesian, so that's very important.
All right, so he's entrenched,
So he's not just speaking as a pollster, he's speaking as a Barbadian who knows the history and the social realities of Barbados, not just as a researcher who flies in and has to, use his polling instrument. And I asked him about how the economy was going to affect this campaign, because, as you know, a bad economy rarely favors the incumbent, which in this case is Stuart of the DLP. So let's hear what Peter had to say.
Yeah, it's possible, and I would say it's highly probable. As far as the polls are concerned, we have a challenge with contemporary data where none has been released. But certainly the last time we polled, we had a distance of almost 40 percentage points between the lady that was leading the Barbados Labour Party and the gentleman who is currently Prime Minister. So I'd say, all things being equal, it's highly likely that tomorrow we will make history and we will...
So, well, that's another pollster there. So we were talking about what has to happen in the first couple days of any election. So what happens, we were also discussing the manifesto. The manifesto, if you're not aware of Caribbean politics, is antiquated, an antiquated use of
a document.
Yeah, a pamphlet essentially outlining, well, these are our plans for the first 100 days, or this is what we plan to do for the 5 years. A lot of times these statements are very vague. It's, we will improve the economy, create more jobs, and it doesn't really get into what it is. But
the specifics.
But this is something that we have come to expect in electoral politics, and this is something that...
In the Caribbean.
Yeah, and this is something that people look forward to. This campaign has been very interesting in that each party released the other's manifesto.
So they had manifesto wars, essentially.
Yes. So the day before the BLP was supposed to launch, the DLP leaked theirs online. The BLP said, well, you know what, this is a blessing in disguise, because now people have seen it and they've told us, well, they don't like this, they don't like that. They went back and they changed and they fixed. On the other hand, you had Mia Mottley on her campaign trail. She goes and she dips into a bag. She made a whole spectacle of it. She's like, what is this? What is this in my bag? And whips out the DLP's manifesto and pulls the air out. You see her there. And she pulls the air out of their sails.
Yeah.
And starts reading from their manifesto. But let's actually listen to what the the candidates themselves had to say about their own manifesto. So as we have Mia Motley up, let's listen to what Mia Motley had to say about her manifesto when it was launched.
All tonight, but I will address a few for you. Because the first thing we have to do within the first 4 weeks of office is to deal with the fact that our foreign reserves are falling and that we have a foreign debt payment of $120 million to pay in June. That is why I shall forever hold Frondell Stuart responsible for carrying us to the edge in calling this election. It is wickedness on stilts.
Wickedness on stilts is one of the best.
I love that. I love that. Wickedness on stilts.
All right, so that is Mia Motley acknowledging the economic situation.
So basically, she is very much aware of what Derek was saying, that whoever comes into office tomorrow, or tomorrow, will have to deal with the fact that the economy is in an absolute state, yes, and the honeymoon is going to be over.
All right, so let's listen now to what Frondell Stuart had to say about his own manifesto.
And we told the country and we told the opposition, this is the plan. We didn't have to repeat all that is in the plan in this manifesto, because the plan is there. But all of that can come to naught if the right choices are not exercised on the 24th of May.
Now, Frondell is saying we didn't need a manifesto because we had a plan.
We came to the Parliament, we've given our sustainable recovery plan, we've said it several times, and that's what we're going to do.
And he's saying this in the context of, I need
more
time, yes. I need more time to heal the economy, deal with these serious realities that are at our door in Barbados. So I don't need to beg you to hire me, because I told you this is what we want to do, and I'm just reminding you this is what is going to save Barbados.
But the problem with, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem was how he ran his campaign.
Yes.
He did not run as an incumbent who wanted 5 more years. He did not run a campaign of, the cliches, don't change a horse midstream, we've come too far to turn back now. He ran an entirely negative campaign against Mia Motley and the BLP, calling her entitled. He said that, she was corrupt and brought back instances of her relatives getting arrested. It was a very bitter campaign, and he didn't quite
and he didn't inspire
hope.
And one of the things that we've realized in elections, that people like to be inspired. People want to believe that you're coming into government to change us, change our future for the better. And if you're focusing too much on the negatives of the opponents, on the negatives that are facing our economies, etc., it's entirely possible that psychologically he may have, because we don't know the results, he may have psyched out his voters and inadvertently supported Mia Motley's campaign, because she was talking about hope. Yes, we have difficulties at our door, but we could face them together. And if we inspire the young people...
She ignored almost every attack against her.
That's important, because they've been attacking Mia for all sorts of things. Apparently, she's not even female enough, because you have to be the right kind of woman. And Mia has been like, this is not important. What is important is the youth. What is important is our hope.
Fixing that same sewage situation you were talking about, more buses
tuition
on the road.
issue at UE, because
free tuition at UE, yes.
Correct. So I want to go back to an interview we did earlier today with Dr. Don Marshall. He is the head of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute at Cave Hill, the Cave Hill campus of the University of the West Indies. He's been saying that this is a very unusual electoral campaign. So I had to ask him, why do you think this is so strange?
It was strange insofar as the opposition party is being led into this election for the first time without its much popular leader, Owen Arthur. He was a prime minister for 14 years, and he's led them, as I said, in the last 5 campaigns, and with a particular kind of style of campaigning that's a bit different from the one being led by Mayor Motley, which is based on rallies, use of social media, and attempts to ensure that there are crowds there to help mobilize optics on the ground and through social media. So in that sense, it's a new age kind of campaigning, and where the Democratic Party or the incumbent government appears still stuck in a past mode of campaigning, relying on persons to come out to their campaigns and so on. So they haven't used social media very much. That's one. The other thing is that both parties are speaking about the IMF. One is the opposition is suggesting that they will go immediately to the IMF, even as it is announcing a number of programs that involve a high amount of government spending. The incumbent government is saying steady as you go, and they will go to the IMF as a last resort. So while there are winds of change in favor of a new female prime minister and some ease to austerity, the independent opinion would have it that Barbados still has to brace itself for a bit more austerity if either of them do approach the IMF.
Another one of the issues that we looking at in this campaign, or whatever happens next, is what happens to the region. We speak integration, we ignore integration, but it is important. So I want to bring up something that a story from Nation News. This is one of the local papers in Barbados. We're going to put it up in the wall in a little bit. This is saying that the Prime Minister, Stuart, said if he is returned to office, he plans to leave the Caribbean Court of Justice. Now, the Caribbean Court of Justice is highly controversial within the Caribbean itself. Correct. It goes from whether you want to have a Caribbean court as your final court of appeal, correct, as opposed to the Privy Council in the United Kingdom.
As your final court of appeal.
A lot of people, including Trinidad and Tobago, where the CCJ is actually headquarters, still believe that the Privy Council should be the final court of appeal. Barbados is one of the few countries that actually is here in the CCJ.
Yeah.
Now the issue is, why does Stuart want to leave the CCJ?
It's funny though, because again, I spoke to Peter Wickham of Cadres and about this particular issue yesterday, and the whole CCJ conversation is almost like a CARICOM viable conversation. Mm-hmm. And it's also, are we really independent? Are we really republics if our final appellate court is still based in the United Kingdom?
England, yes.
Exactly, since we severed ties. And especially in the situation of a country like Trinidad, who's a republic, the Queen is not our head of state. Right. So why is our final appellate courts still in the United Kingdom? So I asked Peter Wickham. Prime Minister Stuart says if he wins tomorrow, tonight, he is going to pull Barbados out of the CCJ. And this is what Peter had to say about that.
Yeah, there are several theories that have been advanced, but essentially all of them revolve around the fact that it is a particularly bad idea to mention it from a policy perspective, and as far as political strategy is concerned, it's also a very bad idea. The presumption is that the Prime Minister has become frustrated, and he's saying things which otherwise he would not have said under normal circumstances. He's appealing to the base of the Democratic Labour Party that is excited by this kind of nationalism, and as you know that in politics, nationalism, race, these are touch points, and the presumption is that he's playing the nationalism card in the hope that he can capture some support. But that one has not gone down well in the national community. Most progressive people think that the CCJ is a good idea, as distinct from what he seems to want is to be able to choose the appeal court, because that's how our judges are chosen, by the Prime Minister, and let them have the final say. It has not sold well in the court of public opinion at all.
I like that comment. Most progressive people support the CCJ.
But this is what other theories are. He has had a few major losses at the CCJ. Now, not him personally, but when you raise things against the state.
Correct.
Right. So let's put up another story. So this happened today. So some background. There were CARICOM nationals in most CARICOM places. If you have been there for a certain amount of time, 3 to 6 months, sometimes a year, you are allowed to vote in elections. There was a case raised where CARICOM national was not allowed to vote and find himself on that list. And it went to the CCJ. And the CCJ needed to have emergency sessions, even on a Sunday, to rule on this. And they did rule that, yes, CARICOM nationals could vote. Come today now, some of them find that their names weren't on the list again, even though they were registered following this. And so this is where this article comes in, where there was a special sitting of the Supreme Court on election day to decide whether or not some people could actually vote in today's elections, and they ordered their names were be put back on the register, and we assume or hope that they were
able to exercise their franchise before the polls closed at 6 p.m. So that's one of the things about. I don't know if if I can say that this is just a politics in the Caribbean problem, because it's rather than acknowledge that maybe that you have not been sufficiently prepared for too many of your cases in front of the CCJ. And I'm speaking about Frondell Stuart as Prime Minister, your Attorney General, your legal team. It's much easier to divert attention and say, oh, we are going to pull out of the CCJ, rather than acknowledge that maybe you were wrong in the first place, and that is why you actually lost your cases. So that's, like Peter Wickham said, that's a sort of nationalist, not progressive response from Frondell Stuart. And I feel as though I've been watching this campaign from the get-go, from the fact that he took 5 weeks to name, Parliament dissolving, it took 5 weeks to name the election date, that this is just not the campaign of somebody who was trying to win a third term. I mean, we don't have the results, so I may have to eat my words. We never know.
Let's put up another graphic. So let's get people to understand what is at stake here. So this is what an electoral map of Barbados looks like. For now, now it's blue, but not because we are pushing in any direction. This is also teleSUR colors. But this is it for now. It's completely blank. The words are not, the results are not in.
This is not a results
just
map.
yet.
Yeah.
What people are telling me on the ground is we're looking out at St. Lucie and we're looking at St. Andrew. If those two give any sort of trouble today, this is going to take you. This is going to take us.
Those are the deciders.
Yeah, and that's going to take us into the early morning.
Swing seats. Those are the swing seats.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's going to take us into the early hours of the morning before we get a result. If those two come in early, and those two come in any direction, they're bellwether. We're going to have a winner. We can have a winner before midnight, before the day ends.
Okay.
So we have I believe a live interview. We have David Denny
of the Caribbean Peace Council. He's supposed to be joining us live from Barbados.
Do we have him available, Mr. Denny?
Okay, so we have to go back to David, yes.
So let's very quickly, let's look at what, if you put up on the wall again, let's look at how the vote went in 2013.
Yeah.
It was a very close vote. It was very close. It was 14 to 16.
Describe the colors to our viewers.
Okay. So yellow is the ruling party, the DLP. Right. Red is the BLP. Now keep in mind we're looking at 2013 map here. And this is how it went. So you see that it was a very close race back then. We don't know how close it's going to be now. But again, you still, what's interesting is that St. Lucie, St. Andrew are different.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned this because that's something that Dr. Don Marshall mentioned earlier. He's like, a lot of people are really excited by the campaign being run by the Barbados Labour Party, but you cannot discount the support, the groundswell of support that the DLP has. So let's not rule them out because as that, Dennis also said, that we vote not party, we vote personalities. So people like Frondell Stuart, regardless of what we might think. People like Mayor Motley, regardless of what we might think.
I don't know, we don't always vote by, I don't know, we always vote
Party?
personality over party.
Person.
I know that you can hear people in Trinidad especially, and one party till I dead. But I understand that we have David Denny on the line now. So David, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
So where are you exactly right now, and what is the mood there?
Well, I'm in St. Michael, and the mood is that the people of Barbados is waiting for the results. The people of Barbados would like to see a political change, and the people in Barbados, are at the stage where they're just waiting on the final decision and the final counting to start whatever celebration that they would like to start in Barbados, rather it be the BLP or the LP celebration in terms of who will win the government.
David Denny,
But
I don't want to be presumptuous. Can I ask you who do you think may win?
Well, the majority of people of Barbados is calling for the Barbados Labour Party, and I think that there's a possibility that you will see that there's a Barbados Labour Party government in Barbados by tomorrow morning.
Now, I'm glad you talk about tomorrow morning. You may have a better idea on the ground over there how the results are coming in. How are they coming in? How many seats are counted? How many seats are left to be counted? Is anything actually declared as yet?
But we don't have that information on any of the seats really as yet in terms of who are leading and who will win. But I think that as soon as that information starts to come in, we will be able to share it with, with teleSUR.
So let's look back on the campaign a little bit, and you would have seen the dichotomy of the campaign, of course, and you might also understand some of the history of it. Looking back at this campaign and looking at how other campaigns that you've seen, is this the sort of campaign where the DLP threw in the towel?
I think really that the Democratic Labour Party is going through some difficult, it's going through a difficult period in that there's serious economic problems in Barbados, and there's a call by the public officers for a salary increase. And then there's also a call for, as I mentioned earlier today, in relation for the appointment of public officers. So I think that the Democratic Labour Party is losing a lot of its ground support because of that kind of conditions. And I think that the Democratic Labour Party have failed to seriously deal with these economic issues and these social issues that are affecting working class people, not only at the bottom, but also the middle class in Barbados.
Now, David Denny, we've been speaking about how Barbados has some serious economic issues to deal with. What will the new government have to do as soon as they get into office to address those issues?
Well, in the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party, they are promising that they would, one, look at the whole question related to some of the taxes that we are paying in terms of the value-added tax and other consumption tax. Then they are going to look at the whole question relating to university education, where Barbadian people now have to pay for part of that university education. And they're going to look directly at the whole question relating to the health services in Barbados. And the manifesto also speaks about the whole question of public transport, because we have serious problems in relation to public transport in Barbados. So I think that the manifesto that was produced by the Barbados Labour Party, that they say that would create the conditions to find a lot of solutions for some of our problems would be seen as as something attractive for the voter of Barbados, and therefore I think the people of Barbados will vote for something that gives them some level of hope. And
thank you so much, David. Danny, I hate to interrupt you, but we are absolutely out of time. But I can almost guarantee that we're going to have to speak to you when we get the actual results, be it speak to you either tomorrow or even on Monday, because we will need to discuss who has actually been named elected Prime Minister of Barbados. So for this edition of Barbados Decides, I'm Soini Gray.
And I'm Keishan Hayes. Remember, you can stay on our website at telesurtv.net/English for all the latest results. And stay tuned for From the South tomorrow, where we bring you who won the results, who won the election, and the swearing in of the new or re-elected Prime Minister of Barbados. Thanks for joining us.